Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Quick sound check. Can you guys hear me clearly?
Oh, yes, Anish. So nice to see you.
I am sorry, who's this?
Anish. Anish here as well.
Excellent. Nice to meet you, Anish.
Same, yeah.
So it's the first time I'm using the platform Zoom through this platform. So I'm not entirely sure of the settings here. So there might be some hiccups on the way. For example, I did not know that we would need to manually admit people. The webinars that I conduct directly, I allow people to join in even if I haven't yet. So that's new. And he still did help me understand that you guys can, if you'd like, unmute yourself. So that's good. Can you maybe drop a few messages in the chat also? Let me check if that's easily accessible, if everyone can read each other's messages. There we go. All right. Hello, Anish again. Hello, Pranav. Hey, Shruti. All right. Thanks for that. Should we try one more thing, maybe? If you'd like, if you're comfortable, you could turn your cameras on also. Hey, Raghav. Hey, Raghav, how are you? Good morning. Yeah. What time is it there? Good evening, Payal.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's a 5:30, a little after 5:30 in the morning.
Wow. So did you wake up specially for this?
Yeah, I normally would not wake up at this time.
And that too on a Sunday morning, huh?
Yes.
Well, hopefully it ends up being worth it for you.
Thank you.
Hi, Sanal. How are you? A lot of familiar people. ठीक है, चलो. Let's see. Raghav, do you plan to stay for the entire hour and a half?
Yes. Yeah.
Wasn't a very confident yes.
And
it's fine if you're not. See, the only reason I'm asking is I'm constantly getting these messages to admit people. So I want to make one of you guys a co-host who's going to stay till the end, who can
I
admit
see.
people for me.
You can make me, Anish, if it's okay with you.
That's Anish again.
Yeah.
ठीक है, Raghav, in case you might be leaving sometime, let's ask Anish to do it then.
If you want me to let people in or something, I'll stay. So you can assign me any action you need.
Okay. Anish, I guess Raghav's okay. So let me do that.
But I'll get to know. I will get to know if someone is.
I think so. I made you a co-host,
okay.
and now you should see the message. You should see the notifications, and hopefully, anyway, they'll probably die down after the first couple of minutes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Sure. Excellent. All right. With that out of the way, let's get into it. So today's webinar mainly is about my experience in the last 10, 12 days. I had taken a mock test, the first Focus Edition mock test on the 2nd of February, and I had already conducted a webinar on the classic mock test version and then the the classic exam, actual exam, in which I got a 760, and then my journey till the 675 on Focus Edition Mock 1. Today, what we'll talk about is what's been happening since the first mock till this one, which I took recently on the 20th of February, and the kind of things that I kept in mind, which hopefully will also help you create a strategy for how to approach mock tests. All right, so let's get started. First things first, hello. In case we haven't met before, my name is Anish Pasi. I am a GMAT coach. I do GMAT coaching in different formats. There's private tutoring, which I've been doing the longest. At the start of COVID, or around the start of COVID in 2020, I also got into live online classroom courses, which I still run along with another GMAT coach, a good friend of mine and a great coach, Chiranjeev Singh. I also run a weekly mentorship program in which we get together for half an hour a week just to kind of do spot checks and ensure your preparation is going smoothly. Details about all these you can find on GMAT, thegmatco.com, or through that website. Well, with that out of the way, few more things about me. I love the mountains. If you guys have interacted with me before, you would know that about me. Luckily, I've been able to conduct a lot of my sessions while in the mountains also. Few places that I've really enjoyed in the last few years, Ladakh overall. If I were to forced to choose perhaps my favorite place in Ladakh, it would be this village called Turtuk, which is very close to the Pakistan border, the line of control anyway. Himachal Pradesh, again, I've explored Himachal quite a bit. One place which really pleasantly surprised me was Sangla Valley. Pleasantly surprised because I hadn't planned to go there. It just happened that I was in an area nearby and then someone recommended it and I was there the next day. So that worked out well for me. Movies, I enjoy movies quite a bit. TV shows, mentioned a couple here that I've watched recently and I really liked. Air, Ben Affleck directed movie, Top Gun Maverick, the sequel to the original Top Gun. I haven't watched the original, by the way. A few books that have really influenced me: Mindset, The Psychology of Money. I mean, these are books that have really had an impact on me and that have stayed with me. The lessons that I've learned in those books I have been able to, at least to a certain extent, apply in my life. What I'd like from you guys before we get into the meat of today's session is not just, I mean, till before today, I used to typically ask hobbies, what do you like to do in your free time? But today, instead of just asking or you telling me, oh, I like travel or like books, give me some recommendations. And they could be related to anything at all. But whatever you enjoy doing, whatever, and what things you've enjoyed, or it could be what things have had an influence on you. It could be something deep. It could be something very basic. But yeah, let's make it a bit more than just plain simple hobbies. Muskan, straightforward recommendation, go to Andaman. Well noted, something that I've also wanted to do for a while. But yeah, whenever it comes to choosing between beaches and mountains, I end up preferring mountains pretty much always. Let's see. Yeah, Spiti Valley I've been to also. In fact, the same trip in which I went to Sangla Valley, then I went to Spiti Valley and I covered. In fact, there's this village called Comic in Spiti Valley, which was probably my favorite place. It's beyond another village called Hikim. And yeah, probably it is the highest. No, I'm not sure whether it's the highest or not, but one of the highest ones anyway. But yeah, really love that. I have tried paragliding in Beer also. Whoa, too many, too fast. Let's see. Russian literature, that's something I have no idea about. Japan hasn't been on my list yet, but okay, I'll make a note of that. Running, I mean, a few years ago, I in fact ran a half marathon in Ladakh, which was a lot of fun. Kasar Devi. Yes, I've heard of it, Abhishek. Heard of it from you only. Got it through. I wasn't a huge fan of Kaza myself. Liked Spiti Valley overall. Not a huge fan. For my taste, Kaza was too busy. But yeah, Spiti seems to be a very common recommendation. The Good Place. Never heard of this one, Anmol. Haven't watched it. Cook pasta at night. Not heard of this one either. I first thought, Achani, two separate things. You like cooking pasta at night and watching Netflix. All right, my mistake there, Ria. Bhutan. Oh yes, I've certainly wanted to go there. Haven't been yet. Dare to Lead Tuesdays with Maury. Okay, good recommendations. What's the highest village I've been to? I think that's your question, Dhruv, is it? I'm not sure then. Maybe 5,500 meters. That was during a trek I did in Ladakh in Markha Valley. Not 55, actually, I'm wrong. 5,200. I don't know. Maybe that's the highest. Good for you, Nilanjan. Hope the network's good there. Yes, I did try paragliding last year, Shruti. To recommend you guys a book, Who Moved My Cheese? I think a 96-page book. Right. I remember it's one of the first nonfiction books I think I read. Yeah. The Palace of Illusions. My wife has read it. Navya, I I don't think I will. Shark Tank. What? Shark Tank while eating. Okay. I watch Shark Tank. Sometimes it's while eating. That's, by the way, a recommendation as a direct message. Elephant care volunteering. Hi, yaar, I've heard of that. No, Naman, never done it. The Last Dance. Okay. That's the documentary, no? The Michael Jordan documentary. If yes, I've watched it, Rahul. Oman, okay. Sure, Joseph, maybe we can discuss that offline. Very happy to discuss. Stargazing in Mukteshwar. Interesting. Winter trek to Kedarkant. Arunachal books range to Hatha Yoga. I'm not a huge yoga fan, Nitin. I'll have to think about that one, Akanksha. No one straight away jumps out. Landor, nahi yaar payal. I haven't been to Landor. Oh, Nimisha has a long answer for us. Quite a few recommendations. Excellent. Got it. Nice. I like this. Chalo. Kind of selfish also that I thought in addition to sharing things, even I get some recommendations and then maybe a few of those I can use later. So thanks for sharing. All right. Chalo. Give me a second. All right. Let's get into it then. Today's agenda. I'll start off with what my analysis was of the first practice exam that I took. Based on that analysis, what actionables I came up with. Few things that I did just before taking my second exam recently. My analysis after the second exam, and now what my future plan of action is. And then in the end, after doing all those things, I'll kind of summarize them to kind of give you in points, mainly how you should practice exams, how you should take practice exams, right? Which will be kind of a summary of these things that I'll cover before. And let's keep things interactive. If you have questions, obviously chat. Let's keep chat as the first form of communication. But yeah, if we need to have a longer discussion, we can have it over mic also. But please don't unmute and start a question directly. Start with chat. There are over 100 of us, so it can very easily get quite rowdy. So we would like to keep it civilized as far as possible. All right. So I have a question for you even before I get into stuff from my end about mock tests. So if you have taken GMAT, and let's keep it focused specifically on GMAT only. If you have taken GMAT practice tests in the past, what has been your experience? Anyone care to share? You could just turn your mic on and start.
Can I give the GMAT? I'm Muskan.
Okay, carry on, Muskan.
Yeah, so I got a 585. I found the verbal a little tough. Like I didn't have time for RCs in the end. It was very lengthy, and quant was a bit easier compared to the normal quant in
The
the
classic version, you mean?
and data sufficiency. I thought my answers were going right, but they turned out to be wrong. So yeah.
Okay, so when was this test?
I took it this Friday, so 3 days back, 2 days
Okay.
back, yeah.
And then have you had a chance to think about your experience and what you would do now
I
onward?
I think while practicing, I'll at least for verbal, I'll cap my time at 2 minutes because beyond that, it takes a lot of time. So even while practicing, if I'm stuck between two options, I'll choose one and move ahead. That's pretty much it.
That's pretty much it. Okay. You did say that you found data sufficiency.
I thought it was easy. It wasn't. Like I didn't. Yeah, like a lot of my answers I thought would be right went wrong.
So no actionable related to that?
Nothing that I could conclude. No.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Thanks for sharing, Muskan. Somebody else?
Hi, sir. Sanal this side.
Hi, Sanal.
My experiences just before giving this exam was, first of all, what I found during the exam was my time management. Whenever the talk was taking, I was just focusing on just to give the right answers, or whatever answers that are coming for what coming out of my mind was to give within that specific time. So that made me a little bit anxious, more like anxious, and specifically, but the same very right moment I was getting in verbal critical reasoning of almost right answers, but I was finding it difficult in reading comprehension. And while I talk about data sufficiency, for me, the questions for data sufficiency, whatever data insights, whatever the questions that was coming during that time, I was either was I was not able to understand during that time, because all of a sudden what I went through the materials for data insights was totally different when I from that questions.
So the exam data insights questions you felt were significantly different from the practice you'd done before.
Yes.
So had you practiced official questions only or some other source?
Not official questions, sir. Data insights I practiced from GMAT.
Okay, all right, got it. Okay. Anything else also, Sanal?
No, sir.
All right, okay. Thanks for sharing. One more person, your experience either with the actual exam or practice tests. And also, I would like you to, if you can, share your feelings. How did the experience make you feel? How did you feel during the test? If you can talk about those things also in addition.
Hi, Anish. I am Harish.
Hi,
So,
Harish.
yeah, so more than sharing my experience, I have a couple of questions like regarding my test paper only. So I start with the verbal section first.
Harish, let me interrupt you, please.
Part of the verbal
Questions, then maybe we can discuss in the end.
Yeah. So it's regarding my experience only, but so there was a point when I was worried and like the timer was just running, and so I may have chosen answers. If I would have spent like, let's say 15, 20 more seconds per those questions, I would have gotten them correct. So that's one thing. And it usually happens. There comes one stage in the verbal exam, especially when I have to just rush sometimes through the questions, and then I'm not able to like get the correct answers in that moment.
And what are you doing about these things?
So this one I recently took, but verbal I have not been able to conquer. So I actually gave the GMAT Classic exam and I scored a 690. So verbal has been very inconsistent. I've appeared for the test 3 times.
No, see, my question remains. Okay, it's been inconsistent. What are you doing about it?
I don't know. There is no systematic approach, to be honest. But I just think I should practice more, but like that has obviously not been working for me. So something needs to be changed here. Okay. So yeah, that's
got it. Okay. So now that Harish has mentioned it, let me also state that I will stick around in the end for any questions you might have. Right. So it's not like I have a hard stop at 8:30. I do target ending the webinar portion of it or the presentation portion of it by that time. But yes, I will stick around. So whatever questions you have, let's discuss then. I noticed there were a few in the chat also. I do want to keep the current portion of the webinar focused on specifically my journey from mock test 1 to mock test 2. And then the related takeaways for you guys. The rest we can discuss in the end. All right. Thank you all for sharing. So I think a few of these things that you guys mentioned, I will address today. But today's webinar is not entirely about learning A to Z of mock tests, right? I'm keeping it limited, although I think I will cover a wide range, a fair amount of things, but definitely it's not supposed to be comprehensive. It will not be comprehensive. So maybe the specific concerns you guys face, maybe those specific concerns will not be addressed, but I still hope and believe that the process that I'm going to share here will help you at least figure out how to go about addressing your specific concerns, even if I don't give you the solutions directly. All right. So I have a question for you now, and maybe you can tell me in the chat. What's the objective of practice tests? Why do you take practice tests? To stimulate the exam environment. Okay, all right. That's a common answer. Assessing what your current level is and how far you are from your score goal. To gauge where we stand. To uncover weaknesses. To get accustomed. Okay. Indeed. So no wrong answer as such, right? Your reasons are your reasons why you take them. And make sure you send the message, chat message to everyone and not a private message. Then others won't be able to read them. All right. So very valid points I've got. So one category is to develop familiarity with the actual exam. One category, a very broad category, is to gauge or to judge where you stand. Are you ready to take the test? Right? If you get a good score in the practice exam, maybe that means that you're ready. If you don't get a good score, maybe you need to work more. That kind of thing. And also then, as I think Raghav mentioned, to uncover weaknesses. That's to figure out what needs work now. Now, does every test have the same objectives? I don't believe that. I believe the first test and maybe the first 2 or 3 tests that you take, at least, the only objective those tests have is to help you understand what all you need to learn, what all you need to improve in. I've seen so many people get disappointed if they get a low score in the very first practice test they take, even before they've started their GMAT prep. Sure, maybe a low score means that you have to cover a long distance. But then that's the reality, right? That's the situation. Okay, this is where you are. This is where you need to be. Maybe some level of sadness related to that makes sense. But then I've heard words like, I was shattered looking at my score. Then perhaps there was an inherent assumption from before that I should be close to that score. Right? A lot of assumptions there. Oh, because my friend was close, therefore I should be close. Or because this person got there in 2 months, I should be also close and I should also get there in 2 months. A lot of assumptions there. The only objective, the way I see it, of the initial tests is to tell you where you stand and then for you to try to figure out what all needs work. No judgment associated. It's not to tell you how ready you are. Along the same lines, the first practice test you take after preparing for a while. In fact, I find many people feel scared of taking that practice test. They've been preparing for a while. They keep delaying it, keep delaying that practice test only. I'm not even talking about the actual exam. Potentially, one reason is they believe that if they end up with a low score in the practice exam, that would kind of nullify all the efforts you've put in. I don't know whether it's a conscious thought or a subconscious thought, but I do believe, and I've interacted with a few students through which I do believe this is at least one common reason. What if I get a low score? That would mean whatever efforts I've put in have been wasted, and then I'll be completely lost. In case you've had such thoughts or such an experience, I believe that you're giving too much power to that one score. What if the score is low? Well, if the score is low, then we'll figure out, okay, what else needs work? That is it. That score is not supposed to tell you how well you prepared for verbal and quant. There are so many other things also that come into play during a test. It's not just about being good at critical reasoning, being good at reading comprehension separately, and then being good at all the topics separately. It's also about how well you're able to manage time. It's also about how well you're able to manage a mixed bag of questions, suddenly a critical reasoning question, suddenly reading comprehension, again CR, again RC, right? How well you're able to handle pressure, so many things, factors which perhaps you have not used to before. So then you need to start developing those also, potentially, in addition to quant and verbal. So initial few tests anyway are not judgments. They are there to tell you, okay, this is where you stand. These are the kind of issues you had. Now, this is what needs work. All right. With that in mind, let's go ahead. So the first practice exam focus edition I took on 8th of February. No, I said 2nd earlier, on the 8th of February. And I got a 675. My score was 675. Data insights was 79. Quant was 90. I got a perfect score in quant, 81 in verbal. Those are my scores. My analysis, in quant, I had a perfect score. I found that I had time in the end. I had roughly 12 minutes in the end to review my solutions. I was done with the questions with 12 plus minutes to spare. While I was reviewing questions, I got one mistake. I changed one answer. Later on, I found out that I had changed it to the correct answer. It was wrong earlier. I did not get penalized for it. That's one thing I saw later. I still had a perfect 90 score. I also thought about it that it was lucky that I caught that mistake. It wasn't that I had bookmarked that particular question. I went there, found it. I was just going about things sequentially. And luckily, within the 12 minutes, I happened to come across that question also. It worked out that way for me. That was quant. Verbal. For me, verbal time management was a big issue. I did not complete the section. My first practice exam and sentence correction was not there anymore. So perhaps I used to use sentence correction to compensate for the other two question types, which would take longer. Here, I didn't have anything to compensate, to help manage the time. I did not complete the section. I think I guessed I had one unanswered question left in the end. I also found that while I was going through the reading comprehension passages, I was feeling quite exhausted. And just shuttling between critical reasoning and reading comprehension with no sentence correction to kind of give me a break was taxing. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that I was amazing at sentence correction, but still, the fact that there was less text on screen in sentence correction questions typically, I think subconsciously did offer me some kind of a break. That was missing here. I had to be kind of at that top level throughout to be focusing on what they're saying, what's going on. That drained me quite a bit. Data insights, again, time management was an issue. I did not complete that section either. There were a few questions in the middle in which, and one reason was that I was running behind time, and mainly two-part analysis questions in which I selected an answer without even going through all 5 or 6 options. So I started from the top. Let's say I like the third one. It looked decent. I marked it and move on. I think there were at least 2 instances in which I'd got such questions wrong. Right. So, and typically I don't do that. I never do that in CR, even if I'm practicing data insights in general. I go through all of the options to help me catch a mistake if I've made any. So that was, I felt, an issue. One data sufficiency question I got wrong, just one. In that question, though, it was a careless algebra error. It was an algebra question, and it was a fairly careless error. Basically, there was an equation, or the word problem in the question could be boiled down into an equation. And then they'd asked for a value of x, for example. The first statement gave another equation in the same 2 variables. The second statement gave another equation with the same 2 variables. So my thought was, oh, we have one equation on top. Statement 1 is giving another equation with the same 2 variables. We can figure out the values. We can get x. Similarly, second statement also is giving an equation. The main question also had given us an equation. We can again figure out the values. What I had missed was that in the second statement, the equation was actually just a multiple of the main equation. On top, for example, they had x plus y equals 5. In the second statement, they had 2x plus 2y equals 10. I didn't realize that it's just the same equation worded differently. So these were some of the facts, right, after the first mock test. So then based on these things, then I thought about, okay, what are my actionables? What should I do? One thing I realized that, like I said earlier, it was lucky that I had caught my mistake in quant. I did not have a proper thought through review and bookmark strategy. That's one thing new with GMAT Focus Edition. You can bookmark questions, and if you have time in the end, you can come back to review them. You can only do that at the end of the section. I hadn't really chalked out a strategy for myself. So then I thought, okay, I need to do that. Reading comprehension was making me exhausted. So I thought, okay, I will practice a few hard level, 750 plus level RC passages. I think those were the kind of passages in which I was somewhat struggling. I was struggling, shuttling between CRRC, CRRC. So I thought, okay, let me practice some mixed bag verbal questions also, so that I get used to that back and forth. Because in some two-part analysis questions, I hadn't gone through all the options, and perhaps I didn't actually calculate this, but I thought maybe it was two-part analysis, which was taking me long also. So I thought, all right, fine, let me practice a few two-part analysis questions. So all this I figured out on the 8th of Feb itself. After taking my practice exam, I sat down, went through the questions I got wrong, why I got them wrong, and kind of figured out this action plan for myself. So that was 8th of February. And then from 9th till 19th, a day before I took my other exam, what all did I do out of all these things? Just the last one, right? Call it laziness, call it whatnot, and perhaps not a high priority. I only did the last one, and that too actually was a side benefit. I actually created solutions for 15 plus two-part analysis questions, posted them on GMAT Club. By doing that, by virtue of doing that, I got some practice in two-part analysis questions. Apart from that, I didn't do any of the other things that I had planned to do. And then on the 19th, I thought, man, this is going to go on forever. So fine, I'm going to take my next test tomorrow. Right? Can't just wait for me to go through all these things properly. Just go ahead and take the next test the next day. So then on the 20th of Feb, I decided to take my second practice exam. Now, this is something which I actually did for the first time. Before starting the exam, I thought about quite a few things. And in fact, I wrote many of them down. So before I started the exam, I wrote exactly this word in my notebook, sequence. So then what sequence should I have? No, this is not an official exam. This is a practice test still, Akanksha. So what sequence? In the first test, I had a sequence of quant, then verbal, then data insights. So then I thought, okay, there are a few things that I have worked on already. I don't want to change around too many variables. Because if I change the sequence also, I have put in some practice in two-part analysis. There are a few other things also I intend to do. If I do so many things, and let's say I get a better score this time, I wouldn't necessarily know what worked and what didn't work. So I wanted to restrict the variables that I change. A concept I learned in accounting called variance, right? You change just one quantity and then check the impact on the final value. So that way you're able to tell how that quantity relates with the final value. So then I decided, all right, fine. This time I'm going to maintain the same sequence. Then I thought, okay, I haven't thought about my review strategy yet, but fine, before starting the test, the second practice test, let me think about that. So then these are the points that I came up with myself. Now, these might sound obvious to you, but mind you, I myself did not do this properly in the first test. When I write them and look at them myself, they look obvious to me as well. But in the heat of the moment, when already there was time pressure, already so many things were going on, I did not follow this properly. So this time I wrote these things down. If a question is taking too long, let's say roughly more than 3 minutes or 4 minutes, then I will guess on it and move on. If I have answered the question within the time frame, but I'm unsure of the answer, again, I'll bookmark. And I also decided that I'll be somewhat lenient with bookmarking. What that means is I would rather have too many bookmarks than too few bookmarks. I would rather, which is not to say I can just go ahead and bookmark every question. But if at all I have to err, I would rather err on the side of too many bookmarks. I don't want to miss out on questions, on reviewing questions that potentially could be wrong. If I run out of time, fine. We'll see. Anyway, these are what points I decided for bookmarking and review. Also, I thought in addition to clicking on bookmarks, in my notes, I had a register in which I was doing my rough work alongside. On top of every page in the margin, whatever questions have come which I feel are unsure, tricky, I'll just put those on the top. So maybe I don't want to bookmark too many questions. I wasn't sure about that. Do I write the same question numbers here also? Do I write extra? But I thought, okay, let me do both these things. We'll see. And then at the end of the section, first thing you do is review the bookmark questions. In the first test, I was only able to review in quant. I didn't have time in verbal and DI. In quant, although I had bookmarked a few questions, but after I think I had bookmarked 2, after reviewing those, I was just going about questions sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this time I wanted to have a more thought out review strategy. Also, probably the single most helpful thing that I did before starting my exam was I reviewed my past notes. Right? The things that I had analyzed in the first test, what actionables I had got based on that. So I went through those things. And then I just made these notes for myself. What notes? So I had 12 plus minutes left in quant after going through the questions once. So then I decided, maybe it's better that I spend longer going through questions in the first go. Maybe spend whatever 30 seconds extra per question to revise my answer, to find the answer some other way, or to confirm that actually my answers are correct. Maybe I can afford to spend longer there. That's what I decided. That was one. I knew this about myself from before. I talked about this in the last webinar. One thing I'd unearthed while preparing for classic version was when a question is somewhat uncomfortable for me, I tend to make silly mistakes, careless errors. When already I'm kind of not necessarily super struggling, but even slightly uncomfortable, the chances of my making silly mistakes go up. So I just added that as a reminder for myself that this is what happens. When you are slightly uncomfortable, you tend to make silly mistakes. Just a reminder, so that maybe on questions in which I am uncomfortable, I can remind myself of this, and then maybe just check my work again. All right. I did also write down that, oh man, one risk is I had got a perfect score in quant last time. Maybe that adds some pressure, because what can happen, and it's happened with me also, is that this thought can overpower you. Oh, I can't afford to get a single question wrong. And so if you find you're stuck with the question, you still don't move ahead, thinking that, oh no, I have to get it right. Otherwise, my score will go lower than my previous score, and I can't afford that. So I felt that was a risk also. Again, made myself aware of that. Also, time management had been an issue in verbal and data insights. So this time I made a note that this time I have to finish verbal and data insights no matter what. I have to finish them. Now, there are 2 ways in which I could ensure that I finish the sections. One is that I go faster. On each question, I go marginally faster than before. But even when I'm taking whatever the average time is, even then, last time I'd gotten 81. If I give myself anyway less time than what I need to take to answer a question properly, I'm probably setting myself up for a worse score, not a better score. So then how to finish verbal and DI? And remember, I hadn't practiced RC passages. I hadn't done mixed bag verbal practice. The 2 actionables that I had written for verbal, I hadn't even done. So then the question becomes, how do you finish the 2 sections? I'm not faster, but then I made a note, okay, you need to manage time better. Now, what's the difference here? There is a nuanced difference here. I will talk about this more later. But I was very clear, I'm not going to go faster. I just need to manage my overall time better. So based on my notes I had made after the first test's analysis, I came up with kind of notes, things to be aware of, things to keep in mind, even before I started my second practice exam. And right before that, all this, so these notes and then the actual test happened in one sitting, back to back. With these things in mind, I took the test. At the end of the test, my score was 755 this time. 755, data insights 89. I'd got 1 question wrong in data insights. Quant was 90 again. Verbal reasoning was 84. Obviously, 755 I was super pleased with. Anyway, compared with 675, it was a significantly higher score. I was pleased with 89 and 90. I was super pleased with 84 also. The lowest score, 84, which kind of brought down my overall score, if you think about it from that perspective. But I was super happy with 84. And I'll share why. One good thing I'd done this time, I was able to manage this time, I completed all sections. I made sure I completed verbal, or I made sure, but I was lucky also. I'll talk about that I completed verbal. Data insights, I was able to manage well in time. I, in fact, had time left to review my questions in the end also. So then I got into analyzing the test. So a few facts about quant that came out. I did take more time to revise each question. And then in the end, I had bookmarked a few questions. I didn't change any answer. And in the end, I had a perfect score also. Although I don't consciously remember that a revision helped me catch a mistake, but I do believe that overall, this is a better approach. I did get time to review my bookmark questions in quant. Now, one thing that did help me, as I had written earlier, that be aware that when you are uncomfortable, the chances of careless errors are higher. Because I just made a note, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes ago, it was still fresh in my mind. And then there was a probability question that came, which it's not that I'm bad at probability, I teach probability, but still I felt a slight level of discomfort with that question. With that awareness, then I told myself, okay, make sure you've got everything properly. You've understood the question properly before you get into solving. And then I just came back to confirm what's given, what's been asked, and I did catch a mistake in my understanding. I was able to correct it, and then in the end, I had the correct answer also. So that awareness did help me here in quant, certainly. Verbal, a few facts. One big reason why I was super happy with my 84. I had guessed on a complete reading comprehension passage. I didn't even know at the start there'll be 4 questions, but once I had started guessing, there was no looking back. I guessed on all 4 questions. Not just that, they all turned out to be wrong later. Yet I got an 84. Why I was able to do this? Now, this is what I was talking about when I said I can't go faster, but I have to manage time better. This is what I did. I could not have gone faster in verbal without compromising my accuracy even further. I wasn't up to that level. So how could I overall manage time better? By taking such calls. When I reached this reading comprehension passage, it was somewhere in the middle, in the first half, in fact, I think, or close to the midpoint. I was already running behind time. So I could already sense that pressure building up on me. Right. So now there's one option was that I continue the same way, let the pressure build up further. Or when I looked at this passage, I think I spent about 10-15 seconds on it. And I found that I wasn't understanding anything in that moment. And I was drawing a complete blank. It did look like a fairly heavy passage. Not that I could not understand it if I applied myself properly, but in that moment, given the equation I had, given the time I had already used up, the pressure I was feeling, it made more sense for me to kind of release some of that pressure and to give myself more time for the remaining questions. I guessed on all 4 questions. Very happy about it because this was the way, because I understand it's so easy or it's so difficult to give up on a question. And I've experienced that myself also. In that moment, right, you just feel like, oh man, can I even afford to just blindly guess on a question? One thing that did help me with that was I bookmarked it. Although I knew I'll probably not have time in the end, I still bookmarked it, kind of playing a hack on myself. I convinced myself, oh, you've bookmarked it, you can come back to it later. That made it slightly easier for me to guess, right? And also what definitely helped was that I had thought about these things even before the test started. And right before the test started. So then I guessed on a complete reading comprehension passage, after which the time pressure was relatively eased. The last question, despite me guessing on 4 questions, the last answer was rushed. I would have ideally liked at least 20-30 seconds more. I got it correct, but to quite an extent, that was lucky. It was an educated guess. It was lucky. And I think I just managed with maybe 1 or 2 seconds to spare. Had I just taken just a second more or 2 seconds more, I would not have finished the section. There were 2 additional mistakes apart from the 4 I made in RC. Those 2 mistakes, one, when I went back to them, the reading comprehension mistake I understood. Yeah, because I hadn't spent enough time understanding the passage. My understanding was flawed, which led to an incorrect understanding of what should be correct for the question. So I thought, okay, fair game, but it was supposed to happen. That's okay. I had an issue with the mistake I had made in a critical reasoning question, though. It was an assumption question. I'm sharing my experience. There's not a concrete takeaway, but still maybe things to learn through this. I went through the answer choices. I felt all 5 were wrong. I couldn't figure out which one's correct. I felt they were all wrong. So then in the end, I selected an answer which actually I was sure was incorrect. How was I sure? Because it's an assumption question. It was an assumption question. So in assumptions, the language needs to be very, very particular, right? If an assumption is, oh, this thing is also important, and an option says this is the most important thing, that won't be an assumption. Just because X is important doesn't mean X is the most important thing. So the answer I selected in the end was something along these lines. Had they said X is important, it would have been a correct assumption. But the option said X is the most important thing. Looking at the word most, I was sure it's not right. But obviously time pressure was there, and I felt that, okay, although they're using a flawed word, but still, if I bring in this option into the passage, then it's a great strengthener, right? It kind of plugs in the gap very nicely, which is not actually what an assumption needs to do. And I know that, I teach that. But in that moment, I ended up selecting that answer. Later on, it turned out to be wrong. Turns out, the reason I had not understood the correct answer was I misinterpreted it during the exam. Later on, when I read it again, in the first go, I was able to realize that I had misread it earlier. No, actually, that's not true. No, that's not true. My interpretation even afterwards was the same initially. Then later, I looked at the statement again when I understood the mistake I had made, understood the misinterpretation I had. Anyway, it did lead me to think, why did you select an answer that you were sure was wrong? I was sure that the option which said most important can't be correct. Yet I selected it. Right? So that was something interesting for me to think about. That, okay, even if all 5 seem wrong, at least separate the definitely wrongs from the maybe wrongs, and then select one of those. Now, again, that's something which I teach also. I know that. But in the heat of the moment, I was not able to apply it. So many of these things come down to exactly this. Not whether you know it or not, but whether you do it or not in the moment. That's what it boils down to. So that became a learning for me there. It was verbal. Data insights. Overall, I was able to manage my time well. I had time to review questions in the end also. But that could be luck. Now, luck how? Mainly because there wasn't a single question on which I got stuck. All questions either made sense right away or after maybe 20-30 seconds of massaging. Right? There wasn't a question in which even after spending quite a while, I wasn't even clear about how to go about things. So pretty much all questions went smoothly. I did make a careless error in one data sufficiency question. The only mistake I made in all of data insights was on a data sufficiency question. So this was my experience of the second test. Now, same day then, after the test, I got into analyzing the test. One of the questions I asked myself, did I do the things that I wanted to do? Did I do the things that I'd written at the start of the test? So yes, right. And I was very, very proud and pleased that I guessed on a full RC set on its own. Of course, the bonus was that I still had a good overall score. And as you'll see, a better score in verbal than I had last time. But that was bonus for me. I was pleased just for the fact that I was able to take that call. I wasn't sure whether I could or not, but I had prepared myself and I was able to do it. The question numbers I'd written on the top, in the top margin in my notebook, I had written those numbers, but I found I never went back to them because I would have had to flip pages and I didn't even think of doing that. I just used the bookmarks on the screen. So now that's one thing I've learned, that I'm not going to do that anymore. Awareness about discomfort and how I make silly mistakes because of discomfort. Now, mind you, I know this about myself, but what I feel that what helped was how I brought it to my conscious mind at the before the start of the test. In those 15 minutes I spent before the test, I brought it back. Right? It was front and center in my mind. And then when that probability question came, because I already had that in my mind, I was able to remind myself and therefore go back, understand the question again, make sure I got it right. That helped me catch my mistake. The bookmark strategy overall seems fine to me, what I did this time. Anyway, I did not get any time in verbal to review questions. The question I got in data sufficiency, I would have never bookmarked. So I would have never reviewed anyway. Wasn't a time issue. It was just a careless error again. In quant, I didn't even make a mistake, right? So not a lot of issues with regards to bookmark, therefore not a lot of takeaways either. I'll continue to evaluate this. Let's see how the next practice test goes. And then based on that, maybe I need to change something or maybe I need to further cement the same strategy only. I'll see. I'll find out. The sequence. Now, let me talk about the sequence for a few minutes. My initial sequence for the first test, quant, verbal, and data insights. Kind of, I followed what I used to follow with the classic version also, quant, verbal, then integrated reasoning. So maybe that was the reason I went with that sequence. I have some hypothesis for it. I have some reasons that, okay, this kind of quant helps me get warmed up initially. I don't want to do a heavy text heavy thing section initially. So I don't want to do DI or verbal. I want to start with quant. I have a hypothesis based on which I've come up with this sequence. But I'm not married to the sequence. which is to say, had I, for example, scored poorly on this test and I felt that it could be related to the sequence, I would have tried a different sequence later. But now, because with the same sequence, I got a significantly higher score, I'm thinking that the sequence seems fine. At least the sequence is not an issue. With this sequence, I can get a 100th percentile score also, at least in a practice test. Right? So therefore, at least for now, I'm not going to revisit it. If things change significantly, then we'll see. But yes, that's how I would recommend you also think about the sequence. Start with a hypothesis that I believe that I like to start with this second, this third, this section. By all means, go ahead, but don't be married to it. If you find your scores are not reaching the level you like them to be at, maybe one reason could be the sequence. So experiment. But yeah, a controlled experiment. Now, the two exams, if I compare the two practice exams, 90 in quant on each of them, all correct in each of them. Verbal had an 81 in the first exam, 84 in the second exam. In the first exam, 3 incorrect and 1 question, the last one I couldn't attempt. This time there was 6 wrong questions, 4 in a row in the middle, 9 through 12, those are the numbers, and then 2 towards the end. Data insights, significant difference in the number of incorrect answers, 4 plus 1 last time to just 1 incorrect this time. And my score also significantly shot up. My time management in data insights was significantly better. Last time, for example, on one of the questions I'd taken over 6.5 minutes. This time, the highest time I'd taken was less than 5 minutes. Not just that, even this 4.76 included the review time also. I checked that, and these times included the review time. So originally, I would have taken less than that time. Because I could afford the time, I came back and reviewed a few questions, which increased some of these times. So overall, quite pleased with how timing went in data insights for me this time. I do want to talk about this point a bit more. What would be a I don't want to use the word inference, but what would you derive from these two data points? 81 in one exam, 3 wrong, 1 not attempted, 84 with 6 wrong. In fact, let me do one thing. I'll show you this visually. So on the left is the first test's graph. It shows the questions I got wrong. Notice how they are all towards the end. The leftmost question is question 1, and then these are questions towards the end. And the table on the right, the graph on the right, shows my second verbal attempt, questions 9 through 12, and then a few towards the end. Not attempt question, yeah. Exactly, that's been my takeaway also, right? That this question that I didn't attempt in the end cost me. I did think about one more thing. Let me cover this first. So one takeaway now I have, based on this data, mind you, it is possible that in the future I get some other data which changes what I can derive, right? So it's not don't take this as a fact. But based on this data, even I can't come up with any other explanation for why my score would have been higher with more mistakes. And that too, much sooner in the exam. That too, back to back, right? So many things that often people say impact your score. I did so many of those mistakes, yet my score is higher. So yeah, I do believe that it's the unattempted question which significantly penalized me. Now, one more thing I want to talk about, a difference between kind of causation and correlation. If you look at it, let me start with the first graph. This 0 here, I will not go into explaining the graph completely, but this is a graph that comes after you take the official practice tests. I'm not sure what the name is, but it kind of correlates your question with the amount of pressure you would be feeling at that time. So time pressure index, like they've mentioned on the y-axis. Essentially, time pressure at 0 means there's no pressure. Less than 0 means you're further relaxed. Positive time pressure means you are running behind time. Okay. All right. So one thing that you can see from the graph is that the time pressure is shooting up in the first section, in the first attempt, right? Initially it went down, and then after that pretty much it's up, 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 up. And all my mistakes are at the top of that pressure curve, right on the top of y-axis. Compared with that, in the second test, it looks like I took some fair amount of time in the first or the second question, and then already I was running behind time, which is when I decided to guess on a complete RC passage, which brought down the time pressure below 0, smooth. So is it possible that that pressure was also a reason for these questions being wrong? It is possible, no debate there. But when I analyzed the questions later, it didn't look like something that I missed because of pressure, the mistakes I had made, right? They look like mistakes that maybe I would have made even if these questions had come sooner in the exam. That's what I felt. But yes, was that a factor in those mistakes? It very well could be. I'm not sure, but it could be. At least that's what the graph indicates. Not sure about that. One way or the other. Anyway, I don't want to be in that situation again, in which I'm constantly behind the 9 ball, right? I'm constantly chasing and running short on time. And plus, with this comparison, for me at least, now mind you, this is, I'm not saying everybody today onward should guess on a complete RC passage. No, but for me, if I am in that situation in which I am running significantly behind time in the first half of the section itself, then maybe I need to take some drastic measures like that. It could be a complete RC passage. I don't like to guess on CR, because I feel if I'm usually able to answer pretty much all CR questions within those 2.5 minutes. So for me, since the choice is only between CR and RC, I see myself more likely to guess on RC than on CR. It was kind of lucky, actually, in hindsight, that the RC passage that I guessed on had 4 questions. Had it been a 3-question passage or a 2-question, maybe 2 also, I don't know. But had there been fewer questions, then overall I would have saved less time. Right? Sure, I got another question wrong, but I was able to save more time also. And in fact, talking about time, I think the first guess I had made within, if I remember correctly, 0.38. So now they don't tell us seconds, they tell us in decimals how many minutes. So roughly 0.4, 20, 24, 23 seconds. Within 20, 23 seconds, I decided I'm going to guess on this passage, because it was so heavy and I was already kind of feeling the pressure, and I found that I was not able to understand things well. And then it was just a matter of whatever, 5 seconds to make blind guesses on the remaining. I didn't even try to be smart about it. That's one thing I don't do. I would rather answer an RC passage properly or blindly guess on it. No middle ground. Unless, of course, it's the very last passage and I don't have an option. Right? If I haven't, right now, if it's in the middle, then there's no middle ground. Okay, let me try to scan the passage and let me quickly try to eliminate a few wrong answers. Maybe it works for some people, but that's not a strategy that has worked for me and that I would recommend to anyone. I'm much happier that I guessed on all questions and straight away I got that time advantage. yeah, overall, if you look at just the number of incorrect questions, where they were, things like that, it seems pretty counterintuitive that I've got a higher score in the second attempt. Right? But again, the only thing I can derive from this, I could be wrong, but the only thing I can derive is that the unattempted question impacted my score even more than the incorrect answers. Now, why that might be the case, I can't be sure. But I believe one reason maybe is that in addition to quant and verbal skills, they also want to test our time management skills. Are you able to finish the things even? I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, I do believe there's more at play here than just looking at how good we are in quant, verbal, and data insights. And potentially that's why inaccurate, unattempted questions impact the score even more. That's my speculation. I don't have any facts about it. All right. So now I was done with my second practice test. Then I'd analyzed the second practice test, what happened in quant, verbal, data insights, and at an overall level. Then now I looked at the two tests combined, the first one and the second. Overall, in both the tests, I had 21 in quant both times. The one review and bookmark strategy that I wasn't clear initially, I had thought about that before the second test. So as such, no new actionables for me. Kind of stay the course. One thing I am mindful of is that maybe these perfect scores will build further pressure. That next time I'll be even more adamant about answering every question perfectly in the first go. And by chance, if a tricky question comes that I'm getting stuck at, I'm not sure how I'll react in that situation. The good thing is I am aware of this, so I will think about it again before the next exam. And hopefully I will not get stuck in that spiral. And hopefully I will be able to bookmark and move on in the moment. But we'll see. Data insights. Now, only one mistake in data sufficiency this time, only one mistake in data sufficiency the last time. It's not necessarily the number of mistakes, but the kind of mistakes I made. They were both careless errors. I talked about the algebra mistake. This time also, it was something which I should have got. Let's put it that way. Right? So then, but then it doesn't end at, oh, I made this mistake. The follow-up question that I recommend all the students also ask is, why did I make that mistake? And then another follow-up, what can I do to avoid making such mistakes in the future? So then I did the same thing. Why am I making these careless errors in data sufficiency? I had thought about it last time also. It kind of got further cemented this time, that maybe the errors are because I am somewhat compensating time, just like I used to do with sentence correction and verbal. Maybe I'm using data sufficiency to give myself extra time for the other question types in data insights. I did not even put pen on paper for any of the data sufficiency questions in both the tests. Again, it's causation versus correlation. I'm not certain yet, but I do believe that this has played a part. The fact that I'm trying to save time in data sufficiency, and maybe, I'm not sure, but maybe that's led me to be slightly rushed. And maybe if I had, or if I spent those extra few seconds, I could catch the mistakes that I made in these questions. So now I'm unsure, that's the truth. Because although I had some extra time this time, at the end of the data insights section, I ran out of time in the first attempt. So I'm not even sure what will happen next time. So I'm going to take the next attempt also to kind of further understand how to handle data sufficiency. For now, I anyway got an 89. So overall, I got a good score in data insights. I'm going to stay the course. I'm not going to change things significantly from what I did last time. Depending on how the next test goes, maybe my future plan of action changes. Verbal. Now, verbal's the trickiest one for me at the moment. One big issue I have faced in verbal is no sentence correction to give me breaks. I talked about this earlier also. Let me get into that a little bit more. What exactly happens? When I'm doing, when I was doing the verbal section this time, when I'm reading a critical reasoning passage, I read it very critically. What that means is I focus on every connection they are making and whether the connection makes complete sense or not. Are there gaps in the argument, essentially? Right? I focus on all those things quite thoroughly. This time, though, what was also happening, though, as a consequence was when suddenly from one CR question, I moved to a reading comprehension question passage, the initial few seconds were spent on me reading a reading comprehension passage also critically. I was trying to find gaps, basically. If you have worked with me before, you would know this term. Logical loopholes in the passage, which is not needed in reading comprehension. And maybe there aren't even that many gaps, but just that my mind was in that zone of figuring out gaps. I was trying to be critical about reading comprehension passages also. And took me a while to get out of that. This was an issue in the first attempt as well. I hadn't worked on it, so it was an issue in this attempt also. Suddenly, magically, it didn't disappear. So then one actionable, the same as last time anyway, is to practice mixed bag questions. Suddenly RC, suddenly CR, 2 CR, then RC, maybe 2 RC, then CR, things like that. I can vary the total number of questions if I do want to get better at this thing. Reading comprehension, that's still an issue. One big reason I skipped that entire reading comprehension passage in the middle is that I was finding it extremely heavy. Time pressure was adding to the whole thing, but I did find it heavy. So, and I had noticed this in the first test also, that's still pending. Maybe just getting used to more reading comprehension passages from different subject matters that I can understand better. Also, though, I have come to this awareness that either I put in the work in these things to get faster, or I accept that I will need to make compromises. In this case, for example, in this exam, the compromise was guessing on a complete RC passage in the middle. Right? So I will need to make such trade-offs. So now that's the situation for me. That awareness is there. Either you put in the work, which hopefully, I can't be certain, you put in the work, which hopefully will lead to improvement, or you stick with this kind of a strategy in which you are not good enough to answer every question correctly within the time limit. So you figure out trade-offs. The trade-off, the way I see it, is for me, guessing on questions in the middle. So, yeah. If before the next practice test also I haven't done this practice, then I should be more willing to make trade-offs, because I know that this is the equation. I either do this or I do the other thing. There's no alternate that even without improving in those issues, I still end up answering all questions properly within time limits. I doubt that such a magical thing is going to happen. I won't say it's impossible, but I doubt that. So I won't create a strategy based on that. That's verbal. Now, all right. So let me kind of now summarize these things for you guys also. Okay, I guess let me take up this question right now only. A few of you mentioned this initially also. How do you get faster? How do you get faster? Realize now, for me, in verbal, timing is an issue. So far, I've identified two reasons. One, just switching between critical reasoning and reading comprehension. And so I'm going to practice that. And two, heavy reading comprehension passages. So let me talk about the second one, for example. I find it difficult to read heavy reading comprehension passages in the limited time. I want to get better at that. How do I get better at that? I think this is what Muskan mentioned earlier. One approach is that, oh, now onwards, I'm going to practice difficult RC passages and I'm going to put stringent time limits. I have to answer every question within 2 minutes. Or overall, I have to answer 4 questions within 8 minutes. I don't believe in that approach. That's not how I tutor students also. That's not how I have improved, and that's not how my students have improved. By setting more stringent time limits, I can't improve. Because think about it. Are we saying that the reason I was taking longer was because I was too relaxed? No. That's not the reason, that I was too relaxed. So if that's not the reason anyway, that I was too relaxed, why would I set a more stringent time limit? Maybe that would work if I were too relaxed, and then I would be like, oh man, I need to pull up my socks and do things properly. But if even after doing things properly, even then, let's say I'm running out of time, and then I further reduce the time, that's only going to make matters worse, not improve things. So then we need to go through this whole cycle of first improving and then as a consequence becoming faster. If you have interacted with me, you would have heard this example before. How do we learn how to drive? Think about it. Do we learn on the first day by thinking, oh, eventually I have to drive at, let's say, 60 kilometers per hour. Therefore, today also I should be driving at 60 kilometers per hour? No. Not just that. Let's say after learning for a few days, you're still not a good driver. You're still making mistakes. You're still getting into accidents when driving at 30 kilometers per hour. Would you now think, oh, let me make the speed 60 kilometers per hour, constant, let me continue trying that until I succeed? Doesn't make sense. You need to first become a good driver at slow speed. Not just that, one more thing. Does anyone take separate lessons for speed itself? Think about that. Right? I don't think anyone goes and says to their driving instructor, whoever that might be, that today I teach me at 40 kilometers per hour. Today teach me at 50 kilometers per hour. No one learns driving like that. Speed is not a skill in itself. Speed is the outcome of being skilled. Let me explain this. Let me take this a little further. Think about it. What if I say, oh, I'm as good a driver as that Formula 1 driver. I can also drive in the same track the same way that guy does. The only difference is that he's faster than I am. But we are both equally good drivers. He's just faster. That makes no sense. He is faster because he's better. These are not separate things. Right? It's not like, oh, tomorrow onwards, I'm going to drive at 300 kilometers per hour every time in the track and I'll become a great Formula 1 driver. No, I need to become a better driver to be able to drive faster. Bringing all this back now in reading comprehension also, or in CR or wherever. The way to get faster is not to make your time limits even more stringent. That would help if your issue was being too relaxed. If that's not the issue, making time limits more stringent will not help. Instead, go the other extreme. Give yourself all the time in the world. Give yourself an opportunity to become a better reader. Person who can handle a reading comprehension passage better. Think about it. That's how you would learn how to drive. Give yourself all the time in the world you need to learn how to maneuver a car. Then you will eventually be able to drive fast. Same funda here. So that's what, if at all I do that, that's what I intend to do in reading comprehension also. Take my time with 750 plus RC passages. All right. Now, so to kind of summarize these things together, how to use practice tests? In-depth analysis, obviously, like in-depth analysis all the way from a granular level. Oh, I made this mistake in an algebra question. By the way, that was also a note I made this time before this attempt. All the way to a complete test level, right? Question, section, and then the whole test, the kind of things I need to keep in mind throughout. So analysis at every level, and then figuring out what worked and what did not work. What did not work then has a follow-up question. What was the root cause? Try to figure that out for everything. What could be the reason? What did not work? My timing in verbal was not good. For me, currently, the root causes that I have identified, I have talked about. Root causes for you could be different. Different root causes would need different approaches to solve them. And I want to reiterate this. If timing is an issue, the solution is not to restrict your time further. That's not a solution. What it is could depend on why timing is an issue. For me, right now, mainly it's about those two things. The ability to switch quickly between RC and CR and just some dense RC passages. Or rather, combined with dense RC passages. Was there any factor of luck involved? For example, in the first practice exam, in quant, there was luck because I was able to luckily review a question I had wrong earlier and I got it correct. This time in verbal, the last question in the verbal section, I made an educated guess. Luckily, it was correct. That was luck. Right? And maybe there could be other things also which I'm not even aware of myself. Or maybe I don't remember in which ways I could have been lucky. Right? This is also a good thing to think about so that maybe I can plan for such things. Risks. Are there any risks? So I'm thinking, for example, this time in data insights, I did not get stuck in any question. But last time I got stuck in 2 or 3 questions. Was the only difference that I had told myself to not get stuck? No, because actually I didn't even reach the situation where I had to take a call. Things were going much more smoothly. Now, will that happen again also next time? I'm not sure. Did my limited 2-part analysis practice help with that? I'm not sure. I haven't done that level of granular analysis, right? So there do seem to be risks associated with that. Although even after guessing on 4 back-to-back RC questions, I got an 84, a higher score than last time. Maybe I will need to use that as a strategy in the end also. But at least right now, my thoughts are, if I can, I would rather avoid that. Obviously, in order to avoid such a thing, I would need to put in a lot of work. Oh, I would need to put in work. How much work, I don't know. But I would need to put in some work at least. Right? But ideally, I would like to put in that work. Of course, one difference between you and I'm a GMAT coach. I don't need this for an MBA admission. Which from one perspective reduces the pressure because it's not needed for something else. But from another perspective, it increases the pressure also because it kind of becomes my calling card, right? Oh, Anish Pasi, GMAT coach, 760 classic version, 675 focus doesn't sound good, right? So I would want a flashy score in that regard, which could obviously then further add pressure also. So yeah, awareness of what was risky in this test, what kind of mirror image of what was lucky. And based on all these things, what actionables can I figure out now? 3 conversations I had initially. I think the first conversation that I had with Muskan, she mentioned, I think, verbal timing issue, data sufficiency, thinking question answers are right, but they were actually not right. And similarly, whatever else it might be for you. See, you may not be able to come up with the exact actual root cause. but at least come up with some hypothesis. Oh, this is the issue. This is what I need to do to fix the issue. I'm using the word hypothesis. It's think of the whole thing as an experiment, right? You found a problem, you think of a potential solution, you take action on the solution and then test again. Then check, has the action that you've taken helped address the problem? If yes, maybe it was the right solution, well and good. If not, then maybe that indicates that the step you took was not the right step. Maybe you didn't either figure out the root cause correctly, or you didn't think of a solution for the root cause correctly. But at least you think about these things more consciously. And you don't just restrict yourself to, I need to practice more questions. There needs to be method behind all this. My score was 675. If my takeaway were I need to practice all questions, that doesn't make any sense. Right? I need to focus on specifically why my score has been low and then trying to address those specific issues. Now, which is not to say that definitely now onwards, I'll always get a 755 or a higher score. Who knows what I'll get next time? But if again some issues resurface, maybe I'll look at all three tests combined and then try to figure out what I need to do. But the point remains that it's an experimentation. Root causes, potential solutions, work on the solutions, again test, then check where you stand. And to test, you don't even necessarily have to take a practice exam because there are limited practice exams. If, for example, let's say you also have this issue, doing back-to-back CRRC, then you can just look at your accuracy in a set of, let's say, 10 questions at one time or 15 questions at one time. How much accuracy you're getting currently, how much accuracy are you getting after a week, and then see if you see a fair improvement or not. Such things maybe you can figure out even without taking a practice test. But that can only happen if you are clear about exactly what issue you're trying to solve for and how you're solving for it. Then you can focus specifically on improvement in that issue. You don't need to look at it from a macro level, whether the overall score has improved or not. And there'll be so many moving parts in the overall score. Try to get granular like that. Now, before the next test, either I'll work on the actionables that I figured out, or I'll be aware of the trade-offs, right? Like I talked about in verbal, either I work on those things and hopefully they get addressed, at least to an extent, or I be aware that again, I'm not ready to answer all questions within the time limit. So I have to accept these trade-offs. There is no alternate. I will repeat the whole process of reviewing my notes from the previous tests and then accordingly writing again before the next test also starts what workarounds I would like to have in place for handicaps for the problems that I still have. What are the things I must do? For example, I will definitely want to finish the sections no matter what. What are the kind of things I want to avoid, right? So I will think about those things before. I found that was really, really powerful. I had done a few other things, but those 15-20 minutes I had spent before the exam, I think actually primed me for the exam. Now, it could be that even if I hadn't done those 15-20 things, I could have still got a higher score. But I do believe that there's a strong link here, right? I could feel it while I was doing it also. Like I said earlier also, one big reason I was relatively easily able to guess on a complete RC passage was that 15 minutes I'd spent before the test. All right. And then notice, initially I said in-depth analysis, which was all the way from a particular question all the way to a test level. After taking a second test, another level gets added. Now I can try to analyze things from overall multiple tests. I want to reiterate, your analysis could be wrong. That's fine. But at least try to do it. Otherwise, it's about I took a test, I got a low score, I practiced questions, took another test, got a higher score, practiced questions, took another test, got a lower score. I don't know what's happening. This way, at least, you would have some method to it all and you would know, oh, these are the pinpointed issues. I took these steps to address those issues. They didn't work. Were my steps wrong? Were the issues wrong? Then we can ask. That's how we would conduct any experiment. If the steps are wrong, maybe steps should be changed. For example, restricting your time, according to me, is a wrong step to get faster, right? So then you maybe figure out on your own through discussions, whatever, but at least we are experimenting and we are getting as focused as we can while also maintaining the overall objectives in mind. So once you've taken multiple tests, combine those tests to come up with further insights. One question in data sufficiency each time, for me, not a huge deal, but it's happened in both of the tests, then I'm thinking maybe it's something I need to be concerned about, right? So now it's in my awareness. Like I said earlier, right now I'm not going to do anything about it, but if it repeats, then I'll definitely need to put in more thought into what to do. Chalo. Talked about this already. I didn't show this point. So this is the another level of analysis to be added, looking at multiple tests combined, which I already talked about. With that, I'm done with stuff from my end. Hope you guys had a good session. If you did, do leave me feedback, review, testimonial on the site. I am trying to build this. Let me know. Also, you can let me know through email what you liked, what could have been better. Also in the chat right now, if you'd like. Beyond that, once again, hope you guys had a good session. If you'd like to take off now, I know for many of you, it might be dinner time. Have a good evening. If you have questions, let's get into those now. All right, let me. You're very welcome, Manorat. I'm glad you liked it. You're very welcome, Kunal. My pleasure. Kunal again, huh? Familiar name. Good to see you, Kunal. Maybe I missed a few questions that you had posted while I was speaking. So if I did, then please copy and paste it again. I'm glad you felt that way, Akhil. You're very welcome, Anmol. My pleasure, Anirudh. Mock sources, CG, MBA.com, the most reliable ones. Right? All others will have some or the other compromise, but there are only 6. My pleasure, Raghav. I'm glad you could stick around till the end. Abhishek is asking, should I take the initial practice test from unofficial sources? So Abhishek, I know you have been preparing for a while, right? If it were somebody who's just starting off, maybe my answer would change. But now that you've been preparing for a while, there are 6, and which can be enough if you use them properly. So no, given that you have been preparing, I think the first mock test, you can take an actual one. If you find that your score is significantly off, then in the middle, maybe you can add some unofficial ones. To talk about those also, unofficial sources, at least with the traditional ones. I haven't gone through the focus edition mocks of any company. In the classic version, after official, I used to recommend Manhattan, Veritas, Experts Global, GMAT. These 4 companies. Again, remember, they all will have some of the other trade-offs. I will not compare a non-official test, or rather, I will not compare one company's score with another company's score. Forget with an official score. I will look at, for example, if I buy all the Manhattan tests, then I will look at improvement across Manhattan tests, but I will not compare those scores with any other company's mock tests. One question I do have how you will improve for your RC problem. Kabir, I think I will give myself time to comfortably read super hard passages. That's the starting point anyway. See if with zero time limit, am I able to handle them well? If I am, then I'll also check how long am I currently taking. If I am taking too long, then I'll try to understand why I'm taking too long. Right? One way to improve could anyway be me getting more and more familiar and more practice. But yeah, maybe there'll be some analysis that would need to be done there also. But starting point anyway is to give myself all the time and just to try to understand things well. Rakshit, there are some tables floating across the internet. Yeah, you can find that. I know 675 that I had last time corresponds to a 730 in the classic version. My pleasure, Shreya. I'm glad you felt that way. You're very welcome, Akanksha. Thank you, Daksh. So, Naman, I would recommend that you don't go into this mode of first going through all official ones separately. Like I said earlier also, if you find that your score is significantly lower than your target score in the first practice test, maybe in the middle, take a few non-official ones. Try to save a few official ones till the very end if you can. There's not much good content available. Mohit, are you talking about questions or like teaching content? Means what will be your action or process? Did I answer your question, Kabir? Get super depressed as a result. Why, Rishabh? Why do you get depressed, right? That's my follow-up question. So Rishabh has written blown away with your accuracy. Well, thank you. I get stuck with 2 options in 750 plus difficulty. Get super depressed as a result. I mean, think about it. Why depressed? Okay, fine. Let's say your skill level. See, I'm a GMAT coach, man. Come on. Anyway, I hope you, and I've been doing it for many years, right? So anyway, perhaps I'm not the best person to compare with. Either way, whatever your level is, that's the reality, right? One is that you accept your level and then you work towards improving it. Or you get depressed when you see your current level. Kind of you pass a judgment on yourself. Right? So my first suggestion is anyway, accept that. Okay. I do get stuck when I have difficult questions. And like I said, then the way to improve, first point is get rid of all time limits entirely. And then work towards them, try to figure out the issues. Akanksha, at least some data insights practice. Maybe some practice for the rest also, because data sufficiency has slightly changed also. Well, not changed, it has reduced the kind of questions you can get in data sufficiency. Getting used to the reviews and those things also you'll have to think about beforehand. Yeah, so do those things before you take the first test, ideally.
And apart from the data insights, should I also practice like the mixed bag problem that you were facing for verbal?
I mean, yeah, not a bad idea, right? Given that, again, there are limited practice exams, the more such
Right.
things you can do beforehand, maybe the fewer issues you'll find in the exam.
Okay. Thank you, Anish.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I struggle to manage time in data insights. I'm taking time to comprehend the data. So again, Priyam, see, overall theme. If the reason you are taking time is that you are not skilled enough, let me just use a very generic term, then you need to get more skilled. For example, just by looking at data, can you figure out, or you look at 5 figures, I had this question recently. A student asked me a question. 2 rows of data, which row has a lower standard deviation? For me, just by looking at the figures, I could tell, oh, these numbers are closer to each other. The standard deviation is lower. That student went through a whole process of calculating the standard deviation, mean minus the first term, or first term minus mean, second term minus mean, and so on, right? So it could be related to how skilled you are, why you're taking time. It could also be related to how comfortable you are. For example, do you know how to add 19 and 31, let's say? Your answer is, let's say, yes, I can. 19 plus 31, I can do that. Okay. But now, one person, you ask him 19 plus 31, khatak, 50. Another person, 19 plus 31, 20, 21 is counting on fingers. Eventually, that person also gives the right answer. But are they both equally good at this addition? They aren't. So it's not just a matter of, oh, I know how to do it. No, it's also a matter of how comfortable you are with those things, which in turn makes you faster. Right? So it kind of maybe diagnosis is also needed. Anyway, starting point is no time limits, Priya. Trying to figure out the issues and then improve on them.
Anish, I had a doubt.
I'm just going through the question sequentially. Have you added your question also in the chat?
Yes.
Maybe I'm yet to. What's your name? Sorry.
Muskan.
Okay, I see your question. Couple lines.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get there. Great to attend a much more. Chalo, I'm glad you felt that way, Abhishek. Yes, I do try to take feedback seriously. Yes, I did remember that from last time. Do you help with mock analysis? I do, Muskan. I mean, anything related to GMAT prep, I don't guarantee I will be able to pinpoint exactly what your issues are, right? Again, with you also, we do a similar thing that I've done with myself, right? Try to find the issues, try to figure out the root cause, and then try to come up with actionables related to those root causes. Just the percentages themselves are not enough to do those things, Muskan. Okay, now Mohit, preparation content as well as practice questions. So practice questions, there are still quite a few on GMAT Club itself, Mohit. Only the official ones. I think on my site, they're already updated. Maybe I can just mention the site name here. Ruko. Oh. The gmatco.com. I don't remember the complete URL, but in the main menu only there's a item called all official questions. Through that link, you can access all the official questions that the GMAC has released over the years on GMAT Club. I haven't included the practice test questions. Those questions are called GMAT Focus Prep. So I haven't included those questions. But still, there are quite a few. Recently, we've added quite a few data insights questions also, or links to data insights questions also. That's for questions. Content. I will be selfish here. See, anyway, in my classroom course, data, GMAT intensive, we cover all three sections, quant, verbal, and data insights. But so do other courses, right? Free resource. I know GMAT Ninja had made a few videos which are on YouTube. I haven't gone through all of them, so I can't comment on how helpful they might be, but usually he makes great content. I would expect those would be good also. But yeah, I haven't consumed a lot of data insights content online. So maybe a structured course, paid structured course, or GMAT Ninja's videos on YouTube. Those are the two things I can think of right now. Sure, Rahul, second last slide. You'll have to tell me which one. This one? Did I answer your question, Muskan? Ab batao if you have a question.
No, it's answered.
Okay. All right. How to switch between verbal and quant while practicing? I get stuck a lot and struggle with switching. Elaborate, Shruti. What do you mean by switching?
So, like when I'm practicing, if I'm doing verbal, so I'll keep on doing verbal to a point that I won't be focusing on quants.
एक
And
minute.
then once I
What duration are you talking about? You'll keep doing verbal for what? Many hours in a day, many days in a week, many weeks? What duration are we talking about?
I mean, days you can say. Like there are phases. Like if I have to complete a set portion, like if I'm following I'm following a course by Jamburi, so I'll be doing all the practice set. Like if there are 8 practice sets, so I'll finish their 8 set and then I'll move to quants.
Hmm.
So I struggle. Like I feel like I should do it sequentially. I should do 1, 2, 3, and then I should switch to quants. But then it is not like I feel because of this also. It's bit of a problem.
What's the problem? Okay, you're not switching quickly enough,
Like
according to you.
yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm a bit stuck. Like unless I get it right, I try to do that, and then because of that, like if I'm doing quants, it is fine. But with verbal, if I'm not doing it regularly, I kind of lose touch. Like I need to be doing it regularly.
I mean, I still don't understand, Shruti. इस सब में problem क्या है फिर? What is not working out well in the end?
I mean, shouldn't I do it simultaneously? Because in the test also it will come together, like quants and verbal will come together. So I
Together,
should
matlab
know
one
like
section at
how.
a time. Not that one question will be quant, one question will be verbal. But yeah, back to back. So because eventually on the test, you will have to do a quant section very close to a verbal section. That's why you should be preparing both things also simultaneously. ऐसा?
Yeah.
So, but you don't, if you feel stuck, then you would rather get out of that and then move to the other thing you are saying. Right? You would rather
Yeah.
clarify it and
I
then
don't know. I actually am not sure like what should be the correct approach. So is getting stuck fine? Like if you're getting stuck with something, is it fine? I just want to know that.
I get that, Shruti. Dekho, let me first mention. It looks as though you're asking me for what is the ideal way to study. Please tell me. Then I will follow that blindly. How? My first note for you is, anyway, there's no right or wrong here. Right? It could be, I will make my suggestions also, but it could just be a matter of what works well for you. Right? You in your message also, and you're saying also, you're using words like struggle. Whereas now you're saying, oh, maybe I'm doing things right correctly only, who knows? Maybe you're not, but maybe you are. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's there.
No.
But when I did not get, I gave the classic version actually. So I was not getting good scores then also, but then I have already, like, I took a date because I just wanted to get done with it. So still, I just gave on keeping, I just kept giving tests and I just did not realize like where I was going wrong. Like I used to check, like, if I'm doing something wrong, I used to go and see the solution and I used to see the average time which I'm taking, but I wasn't sure like where am I actually lacking? Is it I don't know the concepts, or where am I actually going wrong? So that is something I was struggling with.
Right. So, so see, Shruti, now we're talking about something different. Earlier, we were talking about how should I be studying. Now we're talking about I'm not sure why I'm not getting the score I'm looking for. I'm not sure what I need to do to improve. First of all, did I understand you correctly?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to leave that initial portion aside then. So I'm going to take this up now. Okay, you are stuck. You are putting in efforts, you are doing work, but yet your score is not improving. So you're not sure why it's not improving. Unfortunately, Shruti, first of all, I don't have a direct answer to give you. That do ABC and then you'll have it. Overall, kind of that's what the session was about today also. Right? That you try to pinpoint. And again, remember, they are hypotheses. Treat the whole thing as experimentation. Maybe this is the problem. For that problem, maybe this is the solution. Let me try the solution. If the solution works, well and good. If the solution doesn't work, two levels. Maybe the solution was wrong. Maybe I identified the root cause incorrectly. Right? It might sound too tedious, but I can't think of any other way, right? There's no shortcut that you skip all these things and directly somehow you improve. Of course, I mean, alternates are that you maybe the course itself, if you are enrolled in a course, the course itself helps you. If you're working with a tutor, the tutor helps you. You have a peer group, the peer group can help you, right? But end of the day, still this kind of analysis, I believe, will be needed. Whether you're able to do it on your own or with help is a separate matter. But I'm not saying there isn't one, but I can't see a way in which we skip these steps and still get to where we want to be. Did I give you some
Yeah, actually,
idea?
your session was very insightful in that perspective. So nothing else. Like I will try to work on this parameter, like where am I lacking? I'll try to find that. Thank you.
Sure, you're very welcome. Analogy of car driving was great. OP takeaway. OP क्या होता है भाई? On average, how much review time did you get per section? I don't remember this time, Rahul. I know last time in quant I had 12 minutes, 12 over 12, and no time in the other two. This time, I don't remember. Maybe 5, 6 minutes, 6, 7 minutes in quant and data insights, and no time in verbal. But yeah, I am somewhat guessing. See, Rahul, again, would you advise practicing in a way that we are left with some review time? Ideally, yes. But for example, right now, I'm nowhere close to that situation in verbal. So for me, I'm not even bothered about leaving time for review right now in verbal. I'm bothered about at least getting the section done. Right? So more than anything else, it's about improving from your current situation. But yeah, last time I felt I had finished the questions too quickly in quant. So this time I did comparatively slow it down and I did revise more of my answers. So yeah, between those two, leaving 12, 13 minutes and leaving 4, 5 minutes, I feel maybe 4, 5 minutes is better. But again, that's not hard and fast. There is subjectivity to it. Okay, Abhishek has shared feedback about Ninja's lectures. Okay. Do you trust the tables released by GMAC comparing? I don't have any reason to not trust them, Rishabh. I'll leave it at that.
Anish, I actually had a question.
Mhm.
So actually I've booked my exam already. I'm giving it on 29th March.
Mhm.
And for data insights also, like the what to do when there's question that you don't understand at all. Like there was one airport question. Do you just skip those questions? Should you invest time?
What's
How
the
should you
alternative?
go
Give me options. What all can you do? So starting point is you're not understanding the question at all. What
at
are the
all?
options?
Yeah. Skip it,
What else?
just get work it, or spend more time on the question.
No, hold
Spend
on.
more time.
So in how much time did you decide that you're not getting it at all?
I think 1 minute.
So
1
you've
minute.
already spent 1 minute and 1 minute has got you nowhere.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
Don't see any ray of light. Let's put it that way. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yeah. Darkness.
Darkness. So see, again, it
Mm.
depends on multiple factors. It's not black and white. For example, if it's the last question in the exam, might as well take more time, right?
No.
If
Middle of the exam.
sorry,
Middle of the exam.
middle of the exam, it still depends. Are you till that point? How are you doing on time? Just on time, much you have a lot of spare time or you're behind time. What's the situation?
Just on time. Like
Just on time. So maybe
in.
that bookmarking would make sense.
Hmm.
है
Yeah.
Basically, see, think of it. I mean, the first example that comes to my mind is of cricket. Do you understand cricket to some extent?
Yes.
The sport. So see, one is that
Yeah.
before going into the match, you create a strategy and you create a plan of what you're going to do.
Hmm.
The other is that you respond to the situation in the match. If my team loses 2 wickets in the first over itself, then the next batsman will play accordingly. Right? It's not like, oh, we had decided before the exam that before the match that this is what we are going to do, and then no matter what, we are going to do that only. No, depends on the situation.
Yeah.
If it's the last ball of the
Yeah.
match and my team needs 6 runs to win, then I am going to swing my bat no matter what.
Hmm.
Right? Same thing here also. What we can do or what we should do is think of those scenarios beforehand. Like I took an example that if it 1 ball left and we need 6 runs, then solution is swing your bat and hopefully you connect. Similarly, think of those scenarios and figure out what to do. Right? But you have to think of the scenario. It's not black and white that if you are not getting it after 1 minute, then what should I do? It depends on these other variables also.
Got it.
But
Okay,
yeah,
all
in
right.
general, if after spending 1 minute also it's complete darkness, it looks like a great question to bookmark and move on.
Got it. Okay.
Hmm?
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Abhinav, these again are my offerings here. Private tutoring, classroom courses, weekly mentorship. Currently, these are it. I did offer a program on overcoming procrastination for GMAT a while back, but for now I've discontinued that. That's fair, Rahul. Often the issue is with application. It's not about knowledge, but it's about application of knowledge. Often, not necessarily always. What your issue is, some concepts themselves could be tricky also. Just taking an example, I won't get into the depth of it. I find many people misunderstand what strengthen and weaken questions mean in CR, just as an example. So exactly what the issue is it related to concepts? Is it related to application of concepts? Is it related to skills related to how you read, how you comprehend? Depends, right? Unfortunately, I don't have a direct answer for you, Rahul, because again, the reasons could be at the underlying reasons could be at various levels, various different reasons. So exactly what your reasons are, can't be sure. But if you are not getting good accuracy, yeah, like I think there was one, I don't remember the example, but often it's not a matter of whether you know it or not. It's a matter of whether you apply it in that moment or not. Like I mentioned this phrase during the session also. So if you did apply it, great. If you did not, it's not just then your analysis becomes important, because often the analysis is restricted to, oh, I did not do this. I should have done that. Oh, x square, I wrote as 2x. Oh, I should have kept it as x square. But that's very superficial. At least 2 follow-up questions. Why did I convert x square into 2x? Is it common for me? Do I do such things other times also? And what can I do to avoid making such mistakes in the future? Is it that my handwriting I was doing my scratch work in a corner, messy handwriting? Was that a reason? Was it something else? Right? So you try to figure out why you made a mistake, and then you try to figure out a way to address the mistake. So it's not just about identifying the mistake and then understanding, oh, I should have kept x square as x square. But going into this kind of surgery there also. Did I answer your question, Rahul? Jen, if I remember correctly, we haven't figured out the next dates yet. We probably will sometime in the near future. But yeah, gmatintensive.com, that's the site where you can get information about the course. If we probably, anyway, when the course is launched, Chiranjeev and I, one of us at least announces it on LinkedIn. Typically, the other one also shares that post or something. So if we are connected on LinkedIn, you should find out through that. If we aren't, I would recommend that you send me a request. Plus on gmatintensive.com, you'll find out when we do launch it, finalize the dates. Is the GMAT intensive course similar to classroom course? Only difference? Oh, I think Mohit, you meant is the GMAT intensive recorded similar? Yes. The only difference is that the live sessions are recorded here. So your opportunity to interact with the coaches gets restricted. There are still weekly office hours, weekly doubt sessions in which everyone can participate. But yes, the communication that happens during a live session, that will be missing for you. And the kind of that danda that a live batch adds, right? Oh, my session is tomorrow, I have to study today. That gets a little relaxed. But in terms of content, everything is identical. No, AGEN, we don't have any practice tests. Abhinav, I think I already addressed that. Did I miss out on anyone's question? Tell me if I did. All right, guess not. Chalo, let's call it a night then. All right, take care then, people. And in case I do plan more webinars, which I probably will, I'll let you know. Hope to see you in more of these. Chalo, take care then. Bye. My pleasure, Priya. You're very welcome. Good night.